Okay, we're going to be looking at in our spiritual life here the three basic spiritual disciplines we have in the church, which are almsgiving, prayer, and fasting. Now, if you remember, when we talked about the Beatitudes, that was the very beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, right? And the Sermon on the Mount is Matthew 5 through 7. Let's see some of those slides there, Carl. And then, after talking about the inner qualities, the Beatitudes, then Jesus refers to that we are the salt of the world, we're the light of the world. These inner qualities, as they're developed, they have a way of enhancing and blessing the world, don't they? What does salt do?
Preserves.
Salt preserves. And salt, so we can you imagine what this world would be like if all Christians were taken out of the world? Maybe left behind. Oh, well, we're not going there. We're not going there, But really, the Christians are the ones who, to help preserve a society and culture. You're blessing your neighbors, by just being a Christian and being a light for them also, showing them the way, Let's go on. And then he begins to talk about the new covenant. You have heard it said, you shall not, commit murder, but but I say unto you that if you have anger in your brother, against your brother in your heart, you've already committed murder, and it said, well, and if you've heard it said not to commit adultery, but if you lusted in your heart, you've already committed adultery in your heart. Jimmy Carter was the lone American who ever did that sin, There are some of us old enough to remember Jimmy Carter's big confession of having done that, and it became big news. It was kind of the ridiculousness of. And then he talked about oaths and revenge. And then we get to what we're talking about today. That's the context in which we're hearing this. And Jesus begins to talk to us about these secret spiritual disciplines. These are disciplines that are done publicly for everybody to see. Right? Each one of them, he talks about your Father in heaven who sees in secret will reward you. So it's not to be paraded before people. So this is what we're going to talk about. And what is the aim of these disciplines? These aims are to help us to trust God completely, first of all. So if, for instance, if you're doing almsgiving, right? And you're giving away your wealth and your excess, and maybe even more than your excess, you are now having to depend and trust God more, aren't you? What do you think people like St. Anthony of Egypt, who sold everything, gave to the poor to follow Christ, huh? He was really surrendering himself to complete trust on God. And the aim is not to make us feel superior to others, but their aid is in our discernment in our life. We gain a certain clarity of thought and ability to see things truly as they should be. And helps us in not judging other people, actually. So let's go forward. There we go. So we're going to talk about almsgiving, tithes, and offerings. Can anybody tell me ways in which they could hide almsgiving? Having gifts that you are giving to those in need.
Like
to the
St.
poor.
Nicholas?
What?
Like St.
Oh, it's like St. Nicholas. Excellent. Tell us that. What happened with St. Nicholas?
Well, he found out about these three maidens that needed to have some money in order to get married. So he he threw the bags of gold into the window at night, and the family found it, and so they were able to get married.
Right. So it was a secret way to to give this, make sure these girls didn't have to be sold into prostitution, but actually would have a dowry and be able to get married.
Yes.
Okay? Okay?
I don't know, somebody, when we were first married, we were having a hard time, and we came home one night, and there was just this stack of cash on our dining room table. We don't know where it came from.
Yeah. Isn't that beautiful?
It was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've shared with you some of the stories we've had where that kind of thing has happened to us. And one of those things happened actually on St. Nicholas Day itself, you know, and it was to the dollar the exact money we needed for this car repair we couldn't pay for. You know, and it was put in an envelope in the mailbox with nobody's name on it, nothing, just a blank envelope with cash. You know, no one to thank God or love. Isn't that beautiful? No one to feel ashamed of, you know, or embarrassed or whatever. And it's awkward, isn't it? Sometimes.
Sure.
You know.
Have to feel like you have to repay them.
Right. Yeah. You know, and what are some other ways of doing that in secret?
We could always give it to some other agent to do it for you.
There you go. Give it to a different agent or agency. Either way.
Charity organization.
Charity organization, to the church itself, you know. It's like at some churches they have like an alms box, okay? And that would be a nice thing, to maybe have an alms box here, where you can actually, people could be putting that in, and when people come and have need, we have something from the alms box to give them, where it's not coming from a particular person in the church, we don't know who did it, but it would be beneficial to them, you know. And something I thought of last night was I was thinking about the people that meet here and the AA people, you know. I bet some of them kind of struggle, and I think that, you know, we should have some reach out ministry to them, at least make sure that they know that we're available. And I was thinking of different things. I was thinking of maybe helping them with, you know, with one of the steps, you know, where they need to confide in somebody, you know, kind of let them know what the real history is, you know, giving an account of their life, you know. There might be other ways too, and but one thing is that it's a possibility that if we're connected with somebody there, and they could put a bug in our ear about somebody who's really struggling, but really trying to change their life, you know, that we might be able to take that alms box, and that could be given through whoever, you know, and you know, that might be a beautiful thing, you know. We had the blessing one time where when our engine blew in our vehicle, and we thought, well, we're just gonna we couldn't repair it, and someone anonymously through the priest said, I'm gonna have that engine done for him. You know, I've never known who that is, who I can say thank you to. What a great thing to do that in secret. Okay, let's talk about, you know, in the Old Testament, in addition to almsgiving, there was what was called tithes and offerings, you know, and a tithe was, you know, a percentage of 10%, usually it's thought of 10% of your wealth that you give to God, and then offerings are what's above that, you know, even doing more than what the law has asked them to do. And we have a quote here from the Old Testament, the Proverbs, honor the Lord with the first fruits of all your produce. You know, people thought of Cain and Abel, and they thought about how, you know, God accepted Abel's sacrifice, but not Cain's sacrifice. Why didn't God accept Cain's sacrifice?
So it wasn't his first fruits.
Wasn't his first fruits. It was giving his best to the Lord. Huh? And that's what we're supposed to do, is give our very best. You know, and you know, the thing that people should do in their spiritual discipline really is, you know, when you get your paycheck, the first thing you should be writing is for God's work. You should write for the church. Be the first thing, not the last thing. Do I have enough money left over? No. You start off with that as your discipline. You know, and then Malachi talks about people who have robbed God because they didn't give their tithes. You know, actually like stealing from God. You know, we need to be, you know, there's something beautiful about being givers. You know, if you want to emulate somebody in life, you know, do you want to emulate somebody who's stingy and, you know, or do you want to emulate somebody who is a giver, gives of themselves for the benefit of those around them? That's who you want to be like, right? You know? In the New Testament, it talks about giving, and it talks about it in this context, that being generous with your wealth. It talks about a cheerful giver, how God loves a cheerful giver. You know? I mean, what a wonderful thing. It can be so much fun to really be a blessing and help somebody in need, you know. And especially if you did it in a way that they didn't know it was you know. Regular giving. The first day of the week, you know, they laid aside, the early Christians did. You know, giving regularly, not haphazardly. This is the same thing with all of our spiritual disciplines. They need to be things that are regular. You know, that's the most important thing to begin with. Be consistent. Don't be up and down. A neurotic Christian who just kind of gets, you know, gets really fired up one day and the next day, or kind of like, I don't pray at all, right? But you want to be consistent. Even if it's a small amount of time you're spending in prayer, be consistent with what you're doing. You know, same thing with your giving. And according to one's means, the way God has blessed you, you know, there was a problem, I believe, when in the Bible, when it talks about the widow who gave her 2 mites, you know, and that's all she had, you know, and she gave more than everybody else, Jesus said. There's a problem with a religion that would let that poor widow give everything she had, and these people don't do anything to help her. You know? You know, there are people that have more and able to do more with their means. You know, J.C. Penney. Anybody know the story of him? That guy, he was a tither, okay? Started off giving 10%. And God, he kept prospering in life. And as he prospered, he kept raising that percentage because he realized how much God was blessing him. He was given 90% of what he was making to God. Isn't that beautiful? You know, and to give in according to how God is blessing you, to let that be a blessing for others. You know, St. John Chrysostom, when he talks about these things, you know, he talks about your extra coat belonging to the poor. You know, our abundance belongs to other people, not to ourselves. Okay, and here's the verse, I quoted part of it. Upon the first day of the week, let everyone lay by him in store as God has prospered him. And there's plenty of other verses on this. Let's move forward. And from the Lenten Triodian, and I think it's so appropriate that we're doing this during Lent, and to hear these hymns, and would somebody please read this hymn from the Lenten Triodian? Who? Okay, Ben. Thank you, Ben, for volunteering.
Come, let us cleanse ourselves by almsgiving and acts of mercy to the poor, not sounding the trumpet or making a show of our charity. Let not our left hand know what our right hand is doing. Let not vainglory scatter the fruit of our almsgiving, but in secret let us call on him that knows all secrets. Father, forgive us our trespasses, for thou lovest mankind.
Yeah, very beautiful, really centering on that secrecy of giving. And look what can happen if you don't. Let not vainglory scatter the fruit of our almsgiving. You know, where you make a show of it. You let people know. You sound the trumpet. You know. I think it's sad in churches when people have to put donated by their name on that. That's sad, isn't it? You know, I mean, it's not so bad to say done in memory of. You know. But I would prefer for there to be none of that, and to be done because it's the thing the Lord wants us to do. And then this is from Bishop Calasosuer, and we'll pick Ansera. to read this.
Okay.
Okay, Sarah.
But almsgiving means more than this. It is to give not only our money, but our time, not only what we have, but who we are. It is to give a part of ourselves. For the mere giving of money can often be a substitute and an evasion, a way of protecting ourselves from closer personal involvement with those in distress. On the other hand, to do nothing more than offer reassuring words of advice to someone crushed by urgent material anxieties is equally an evasion of our responsibilities.
That is such a great quote. I love that quote. You know, I was on the board of directors at the homeless mission in Fort Smith for a number of years. And at one of the board meetings, a particular Protestant minister of one of the most prominent Protestant churches in the community, he said that, you know, he says, the reason I'm on this board is so our church doesn't have to deal with the homeless people. We'll throw money to your organization so we don't have to really deal with them. You know, there's another church in Fort Smith that is an Assembly of God church. In that particular church, they've done a lot of outreach to people who are poor and destitute and all. And that caused them to lose members. Because people didn't like being next to somebody who's kind of smelly and dirty and all of that and not quite as clean. And, you know, they wanted a church where it's respectable. You know, sometimes we can throw money at a problem, but we don't give of ourselves to that person. So giving of ourselves is vitally important, you know. But let us not love in word only, let us love in word and deed. And that's the point of Bishop Kellis. Take your drinks with you.
That was from my mother, okay? I can't say no.
Hey, love you. Thank you so much. Okay, bye-bye. Okay. Okay, we're ready to go? Okay, now we're going to talk about prayer, okay? And the first thing is we need to have a rule of prayer. A basic way in which we regularly pray. You know, we have prayer books for that reason. You know, that give us morning and noon and night prayers. We have other prayer books that allow us to pray the hours. You know, some people might be able to do that. There's one prayer book that some nuns put out that has an abbreviated form of the hours to make it very simple for people to spend 5 minutes at a time throughout the course of the day and be able to do this. But to have a consistent and regular life of prayer, you know. And there are three things with praying is we need to teach the body to pray, we need to teach the lips to pray, and then we need to teach the heart to pray, you know. And with the body, it's simply getting the body to get up for prayer or stay up for prayer or to stand in prayer. You know, we do a lot of things with the body. You know, we do prostrations with the body, make the sign of the cross. We let the body be participant with the prayer life, okay? And then then praying with the lips, learning these prayers, learning how holy people pray, learning the language of prayer, you know, and letting that get into our heart, where we're now praying with our heart. You know, that is so important. There's that story of the monk who goes. Did I ever tell you this? The monk who goes out to the deserted island and to pray, and the bishop hears about him, goes to see him. And it's just a story. Have I told this
I'm
one?
not sure.
And the bishop is trying to teach him the Lord's Prayer. He asked him, how do you pray? And he says, I just have one prayer, God bless me and my stick. You know. And the bishop says, well, there's more to prayer than God bless me and my stick. You know. And he says, do you know the Lord's Prayer? No, I don't. You know. So he teaches this guy the Lord's Prayer, but this guy is really slow. And it takes the bishop all day long just for this guy to learn the Lord's Prayer. the bishop thinks he's accomplished something, gets in his ship, and as he's sailing off in this make-believe story, the guy has a stick between his legs like a jet ski, skimming across the top of the water, gets up to the boat. He says, "Excuse me, your grace, but what comes after thy will be done." But it's most important that the heart is praying, than the words we use so much, you know what I'm saying? But that we're really truly communing with God. In the prayer manuals, it will talk about when you start prayer, not to just jump into prayer, but to be silent, stand in silence. Just stand in silence. Become aware of things. Become aware. A lot of times you'll sense very quickly when you stand in silence for a few minutes or a few seconds, you start realizing God's presence there with you, before you just start praying. Okay? And of course, the Lord's Prayer is the prayer that Jesus said, when you pray, say this. Some people are against written prayers. Well, the Lord himself gave us a prayer that is a formulated prayer that we are to pray. And so that has great merit. And the early Christians, they prayed the Lord's Prayer 7 times in a day, And especially what we should do is in addition to our morning, noon, and night prayers at our meal times, to say the Lord's Prayer at meal. There may be times where maybe we're celebrating a particular feast, so we'll sing the troparion of that feast instead of the Lord's Prayer. But that should be kind of a normal thing. Deborah and I actually had a shocking thing happen to us when we moved out to Pennsylvania, and Deborah and I decided to go out one evening, which was extremely rare for us to do, and the children were small, and there was Mary's Sunday school teacher, was willing to babysit the kids for us. So the kids go over there, and they get to dinner in this Orthodox family's home, and my kids won't eat their food. They're sitting there not eating. And all of a sudden it dawned on the Sunday school teacher that I bet that you say a prayer before you eat your food in the morning. When you eat any meal. And they said, yes, we do. And she says, we don't know any prayers. Would you say the prayer? So my daughter said the prayer as this little girl, for them. How pathetic is that? How sad is that? To not even know to say a prayer and how to say a prayer. So these say the Lord's Prayer, my goodness, okay? I'm sure none of you eat without prayer. Deborah was in Pennsylvania. She moved out there before I did and going to seminary, and so I had the kids, and it was Great Lent. And so it was after a pre-sanctified liturgy, starving, fasting all day and everything else, and we're on our own, and I'm being a bachelor, and I decided to take the kids to a Del Taco and get, some bean burrito and that kind of thing. And this guy was from India there, and he said to me, you are the first person that I've ever seen in America who prayed before they ate. Now that wouldn't happen here in Arkansas because people pray all the time in restaurants, but this is California. He says in India, no one from India would ever think of eating without first praying. Isn't that something? And I want you to think a little bit about the sacredness of your eating. And why we're connecting prayer with eating. And why we even have that Thanksgiving prayer afterwards with our eating. Because we're not just filling our stomach with food, but there's something that's transformative or can be transformative in a meal. I mean, we have the icon of that transformation right there today in the liturgy with the Eucharist, don't we? You know? But even in your home, that becomes a sacred moment, a sacred time. You know, people today don't like sitting around and together and eating as a family. Everybody's off doing their own thing, you know? And we need to eat as a family. The Jewish people had a belief that when you ate together, you were making a loyalty pact with the other person. I'll never betray you. And that's the treachery of Judas. He eats with the master and goes out and betrays him. You know. So this is another form, if you want, a kind of another form of communion, maybe we'll call it, you know, where we're together with God is with us, and we're with each other. And we don't say unpleasant things at the table, you know, and when we take it as a holy time to be together and to enjoy being with one another. Okay? Got off on all that. And then, of course, the Jesus prayer and unceasing prayer, you know, we're told, we're enjoined in Holy Scripture, you know, to pray unceasingly, pray constantly, you know. How do you do that, you know? One of the tools to help one to get there and is the Jesus prayer. You know, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And that can be done in many forms. You know, sometimes it's just Lord Jesus is one form. It's a very basic form. Or the whole prayer or Lord Jesus, have mercy on me. You know, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I've even read where some people turn that into an intercessory prayer too. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy upon your servant, and begin to name and pray for different people as you're praying, you know. But a way to get that prayer, that repetition, where it becomes part of you so that you really become a person that is constantly living in a close relationship with God, that He is in every thought and every breath that you breathe. And of course, the hesychastic method, we're not going to go into this, but we talked a little bit in the sermon today about that when we talked about that temptation. We talked about being in the cage with the lion, you know, and this whole idea of being still in there and being an observer, being watchful of this without participating in it and not allowing that to take over our life. So something that is evil starts to give birth to sin. But we actually become aware of this, and then we start understanding why this is happening. But the ultimate goal here is to go deeper than stillness and go into silence, you know, and being in deep communion with God. But you might practice some silence in your life. This would be a good thing. Getting really quiet and not have noise blaring in the house all the time. You know, turn off the TV and the radio and whatever you're using. When you're driving your car, have some time to just silence in the car. And give space for God to be there. And do this on a regular basis in your daily activities. You might be saying the Jesus prayer, for instance, as you're going about, maybe as you're commuting. That can be a way of doing that. Let's see what else we have here. During times of temptation, that's a good way of fighting that off. You know, to start saying the Jesus prayer, it will leave you. You know, and then what else do I have? Don't have anything else. Okay. This is from Anthony Bloom, Father Anthony Bloom here, and he had something on the Lord's Prayer that I just thought was very interesting. And actually, what he does is he sees the Lord's Prayer in one of his books. He's got a few books like Beginning to Pray, and does anybody remember any of the other titles of those books? How many have read Anthony Bloom? Okay, a couple people have, 3 people have. Okay, good. And but in the Lord's Prayer, he talks about it as being a journey, and going from the end of the prayer as the starting point of the journey to the goal in the prayer. So I just thought that would be an interesting way of looking at it, that we're not going to go long into this explanation of the Lord's Prayer. I would like to actually, at some point, maybe we could have a long talk about the Lord's Prayer because it's so deep and rich. But he takes it like the children of Israel, and they're like slaves in Egypt. And so as slaves in Egypt, they were under the tyranny of Pharaoh, right? And they needed to be delivered from Pharaoh. And so the prayer is, we want to be delivered from the evil one. We want to deliver from the spiritual Pharaoh, delivered from Satan himself, okay? And then we're on our way to leaving Egypt. We're trying to get free of and escape from Pharaoh, right? And boy, I tell you, we get to the Red Sea, and our backs are to the sea, and here comes the charioteers, and we're afraid, and we're being tempted, and maybe we should go back. Maybe let's surrender, whatever it is. See? Go back under that guidance. So lead us not into temptation. We're leaving Egypt. We get there, and we have this pivotal moment in our life, you see, which actually is there's a one-time moment, but then it becomes something that we refer back to over and over again in our life. And forgiving us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And this idea of cleansing, it has to do with the crossing of the Red Sea, where Pharaoh and all of his armies are drowned in the sea, and our sins are drowned, and all the evil is drowned, and we have been set free from this, and we are forgiven, and cleansed, through that. But then we're in the wilderness, right? And we're in the wilderness, and now we got to trust God because what's happening? We got all these people, and there's no food and there's no water. And how are we going to eat? How are we going to drink? Right? And so we give us this day our daily bread. We become dependent on God, as we talked about earlier with the almsgiving, right? We become so dependent on God, and God provided and fed them in the wilderness with manna from heaven, and with quail, and with the water that was struck, the rock that was struck, that was Christ, and the water came forth, Now that's, by the way, why Moses couldn't go into the promised land. Because he struck the rock 2 times. There was 2 occasions they needed water. And the second time, God told him just to speak to the rock and not hit the rock. Well, if that rock was Christ, Christ was only crucified once. He didn't get crucified again. So Moses, because of his disobedience, he broke the iconic image of what he was supposed to be doing, speaking to the rock. He wasn't allowed to go to the promised land. Wow, isn't that something? But they had their spiritual food and drink, and so do we. And by the way, the word daily bread in Greek has this idea of super essential bread. It's bread above bread. It's like the Eucharistic bread. Okay, it isn't just bread for your daily needs. It's both. Okay, and so then we're getting fed, and now also the wilderness, they were given something. They were given the 10 Commandments there, And here we learn what God's will is, and so we pray, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. That we are now followers of Christ, that we are there to do his will. If you love me, he says, obey my commandments. And what are his commandments? To love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and soul and mind, and thy neighbor as thyself. Right? So we live that out, doing God's will. And then we're able to enter the promised land, where God's name is hallowed and blessed. Ultimately, we realize our sonship. We realize that we are the children of God with our Father. That we are brothers with Christ Jesus, co-heirs with him. Well, that's so beautiful, and that intimacy we have as being now, who were formerly not his children, now made his children. Okay? So, I just wanted to give you that little bit. Okay. Okay, now we're going to go to the last part, fasting. Okay. Tell me, what is the purpose of fasting? Why do we even bother to do this?
Learn discipline.
Learn discipline? Good answer. What else?
For spiritual power.
For spiritual power, okay?
Like casting out the demons that the Lord said that this comes out by prayer and fasting.
Okay, good, good. What else?
So you stay hungry.
Stay hungry. Good. And what does that do for you?
Makes you understand that there's only one thing that actually satisfies.
Yeah, good, good. And it makes you feel, you become more dependent on God too. Which is all these disciplines make you, and prayer obviously makes you, is a way of articulating that you are dependent on God for everything. You know,
That man does
almsgiving,
not live by
it does
bread
it?
alone.
The man doesn't live by bread alone. Right, very good, very good. Some good stuff. By the way, you know what St. Seraphim said about fasting? There was a person who came to him, and he was concerned about his daughter who wanted to get married to somebody, and he asked the person said that the person's a Christian who he's going to get married. St. Seraphim says, well, does that man fast? Anybody know this story? Anybody read this story? Does a man, you know the story, the man fasts. And he says, no, he doesn't. Well, he can call himself whatever he wants to, but if a person doesn't fast, he's not a Christian. You know, we talked a little bit about the sermon today about fasting and, asceticism, And so many people, they make this optional. Many people claim to be Christians, they never fasted a day in their life. When Jesus says, not if you decide to fast when you feel like it, but he says when you fast, it's assumed that you will do this. And Jesus himself gives us the model of fasting and shows us the way. Okay? So it's extremely important because it's only this is the manner and method in which a person can get into the deeper part of the life. This helps break in there. And that's why sometimes when we break in there, things bubble up out of us and thoughts and other things. You go, golly, where'd that come from? I don't like that and this is ugly. Ever had an experience like that when you're fasting? That's normal. That's to be expected when you're doing that. Huh? Because now you're starting to become aware and you're starting to become, you're having to face your demons. You have to face these things that are rising inside of you. They're there all the time, but fasting helps bring it out. It helps cast out the demons. Okay? And it helps give us self-control, right? We get some discipline in our life, which is so vitally important because we're so undisciplined. And it helps us to see things in a Eucharistic way. That we're living with Thanksgiving when we eat. We're doing stuff in our food. When you eat, if you've been fasting, and if you fasted over all of Great Lent, right? And during Great Lent, you had no meat. And you went through Great Lent and you had no dairy products. And you get the Pascha. And you eat some of those cheeses, and the lamb, and the eggs, and all the other stuff that's there, the milk. None of these things ever tasted so good. And there's an appreciation you have for it. There's a delight you have, there's a joy you have in it because you did without it. And we don't appreciate things until we do without for a season, for a period of time. And we begin to be more thankful for the things we have instead of just taking for granted. Instead of just stuffing down food down our throats, we don't even think about what we're eating. Deborah and I, when we dated, we didn't hold hands or kiss. We fasted from holding hands and kissing until we were engaged. Okay? I'll tell you something. When I held her hand for the first time, that was something special. That was something really special to hold her hand. And so many people who are dating, they hold a girl's hand. That's no big deal. That was a big deal. That was something I really treasured. And I hope you did too. Okay. And so let's look at some of these things. So it allows the body to take part in the spiritual life, doesn't it? Huh? So our body needs to be spiritualized, and this helps it. And by the way, we talked a little bit, didn't we, not long ago, about scientists who found out that, I think in China, that if you have a vegan diet, that somehow people who had severe artery disease and couldn't have bypass surgery, that in 2 years, even just a vegan diet, that it cleared out their arteries. Huh? Well, there is something good. When you're fasting, you're doing something good for your body. And you're able, your body, to be more cooperative in your spiritual life. Your body becomes well. There's a healing side to your body with the fasting that you really need. You know, whether you're talking from the medical point of getting certain toxins out of your body and out of your system, you need this. There's a wisdom in the church, and follow the thing of the church. Maybe I should have followed it more carefully. You know, maybe I never would have been diabetic. I don't know. I know it's hereditary too, but you know, that's an important thing. So, cleanse the body. Restores the body to health by cleansing it and liberating it from excess weight. Huh? Good thing to have. Okay? Causes the body to sleep less so it can become a more willing partner in prayer. Gain better control of bodily cravings. Eat in a Eucharistic way, which we talked about. And then it aids us in almsgiving. How does it aid us in almsgiving?
Because you're not spending as much money on food.
That's right. So now you have extra that you could spend on somebody else. You know? And you know, when you're doing that for somebody else, you're losing your own life and you're finding your life. Huh? So let's look at these quotations. I think I have them. Oh, well, from the Shepherd of Hermas, it says that the money saved by fasting is to be given to widows, the orphans, and the poor. Okay? So that's a nice, very ancient thing there. It's first century there, somebody saying this. Okay. So I think I got something from the Lenten Triodian. And Lisa, would you be willing to read this next quote for us?
From the Lenten Triodian?
Right up here. Knowing the commandment.
Knowing the commandment of the Lord, let this be our way of life. Let us feed the hungry. Let us give the thirsty drink. Let us clothe the naked. Let us welcome strangers. Let us visit those in prison and the sick. Then the judge of all the earth will say even to us, Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you.
Yeah. Yeah, that gets to the heart of this fasting, what it's about. It's not just about me doing without food, but it's me showing love, because I'm doing without, I'm able to show more love to those around me. Let's hear some more quotes from that. And who would read the next? Carl, will you read this next one?
While fasting with the body, brethren, let us also fast in spirit. Let us loose every bond of iniquity. Let us undo the knots of every contract made with violence. Let us tear up all unjust agreements. Let us give bread to the hungry, and welcome to our house the poor who have no roof to cover them, that we may receive great mercy from Christ our God.
So what do you see in this that we haven't touched on yet? What do you see in this quote? This is also the Lenten Triodian.
Hospitality.
Okay, hospitality is there, but that was in this quote before. What else?
First, we've touched on making recompense for sins.
Okay. So we want to be free of the bond of iniquity, things that enslave us, and freeing other people too. Okay? So how are we going to free other people? Let us undo every knot of every contract made by violence. You have some kind of business deal that was rotten, bad, and profited you but didn't profit the other people. time to, I doubt if anyone here has done anything like that, but I had to make that right, you know. You ever been like Zacchaeus and cheated somebody out of something? You know, he restores, what, fourfold, right? You know, it's a way of making recompense that you're talking about. We did not, you know, so this is also something we better pay attention in our fasting for those things. And then helping those in need, of course. Let's look at the next one. And fasting includes all members of the body, not just the stomach. Okay? So, Ginger. I get this, Juliana, I get all these names in my head, you know, I go, what do I call you? Okay, so Ginger, will you read this? I think it's our last quote, is it? Okay.
As we fast from food, let us abstain also from every passion. Let us observe a fast acceptable and pleasing to the Lord. True fasting is to put away all evil, to control the tongue, to forbear from anger, to abstain from lust, slander, falsehood, and perjury. If we renounce these things, then is our fasting true and acceptable to God. Let us keep the fast, not only by refraining from food, but by becoming strangers to all bodily passions.
All right. So, boy, that says a lot, doesn't it? What are some things that strike you when you hear that?
We're supposed to be quieter and talk less.
Yeah, the tongue. Think of, you know, idle talk that St. Ephraim's prayer talks about, or to talk about the psalm, you know, keeping a watch about my lips, right? The door about my mouth, right? Yeah. Be more careful of what comes out of this. And what comes out of this, let it be blessings and not curses. Let it speak well. Let us be wholesome. No corrupt communication proceeding from our mouth, you know. So important, because that's a big issue for all of us. You know, we sometimes, because we have passions, sometimes we speak in those passions and we can't take it back, you know. So we have to rid ourselves of the passions. That helps us control our tongue. You know, I had such a wonderful mentor in this. He was a Quaker man. He was my boss in draperies. I worked for him for 10 years. I loved working for the man. He wasn't like I worked for him. He was like a father to me. You know, he'd actually call me into his office and says, let's sit down here and let's talk about the Bible, you know, and we'd have a Bible study or we'd pray together, and, you know, this would be on the clock. I'd be getting paid for doing this with him, you know. I mean, he was a wonderful boss, and thought of me as a son. This guy, it drove you nuts a little bit, but you would ask Larry a question, and, you know, if it was a significant question you're asking, he didn't just blurt out the first thing that came out of his mouth. He pondered it, and there's a silence sitting there. Then he would speak, and everything would be perfectly ordered and said in such a way. You know, so important to have control of that tongue. And forbear from anger. And, you know, we have to have anger. Anger's not sinful in and of itself. We ought to have some anger. There are things to be angry about. But anger is maybe the most, or perhaps the most dangerous of all the passions, because we can do so much harm with it, you know. So it's often thought of as something that you don't want to have in you at all, you know. But you really have to have something, not let it go down, your day go down with this wrath. You know, you have to deal with it. And I would say, well, instead of me saying this, let me ask you, what do you do with anger? How do you deal with anger? What are some things that help you deal with anger?
Breathe.
What?
Deep breathing.
Deep breathing exercises. That's a good one. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's good.
When I'm angry with someone, I try to see it from their perspective, maybe how I might be misunderstanding their motives, or depending on the circumstance, we try to see it from their
Okay,
perspective.
that's helpful. That's helpful. It's getting to be more compassionate. What else helps you?
The recognition of what the expectation that we have or I have that caused me to be disappointed, and
Okay.
check to see, just how much a priority is that.
Okay. Good. Good. I like that. What else?
Prayer.
Prayer? Good. Yeah. I had a case where I had somebody who betrayed me in a big way, and I prayed for about 30 days, not knowing whether to talk to him, confront it, to do what with it. But in prayer, I had a transformative experience where I was no longer having this anger and sort of having different feelings of compassion toward him. And then lo and behold, I got this gift. He came to me and says, I got to tell you something I did. I already knew about it, he didn't know I knew. And we became so close. So instead of letting anger get the best of me, blowing up a relationship, by being patient with it, by reflecting on it, and praying, it helped me to have a much better response with it. What else? Yeah. Okay. What else? Anybody have any other ideas what you do with anger?
Forgive the wrong.
Okay. All right. How do you do that? This is tough stuff. This is tough work, isn't it? Especially if somebody really does something really, really bad. Oh. I think that what when we approach somebody and need to talk to somebody about some offense, there's some things we need to do ourselves first. Scripture talks about considering ourselves, lest we also be tempted, knowing that we're capable of doing some pretty rotten things ourselves. I think that helps. To going to the person because of that in the spirit of meekness, which means that you're not only going to be humble with them, but you're going to be teachable in the situation too. There might be things for you to take out of this. It may not be a two-way street. In fact, there are many times where we're angry and we're really not angry with the person who's done us this hurt. We're really angry about something else. Sometimes we put someone else's face. Maybe their motives and what they did, we misinterpreted. And we haven't really understood why they did it, right? Have we done that? And so we put someone else's face, some other hurt, and then all of a sudden, they reminded me of that, now I'm angry at this person. So we haven't done our interior work. We haven't really dealt with that, and this person helped bring that out in us. So we have to understand to be teachable in our anger. Why am I feeling this way? What can I learn from this? When talking to somebody with your anger, You know, I think it's very appropriate to say to that person, brother or sister, and say it in a calm way. You know, what you did just really hurt me, and I'm feeling angry about it. You know, and I'd like to talk about it with you. What happened? You know, and hopefully be able to have a conversation. You can't have a conversation when people are yelling at each other. That doesn't serve any purpose. You know, grievous words stir up strife. Soft answer turns away wrath. You know, might not be good when that person's real angry too, to try to combat that. You know, I actually had as a teenager, I was working at Sears. I had somebody come in there as a customer, and the customer, you know, got the. I was 16 or something like that. The customer got something that was faulty. I don't remember what it was, and was really hot over it, having to come back in the store and all that kind of stuff. And the person was yelling and cussing this woman. She was just out of her mind, you know. And I thought of that verse, you know, soft answer turns away wrath, you know. So I just spoke to her in very nice tones. My voice got softer, quieter, as she was yelling and carrying on, you know. I stayed calm. And by the time they took care of her and everything else, she was totally had melted completely, you know. And she goes, I'm so sorry for all that. It was really great. But anyways, there's a lot to be talked about here. And to abstain from lust, oh, that's another big one, isn't it? You know, how do we do that? Don't feed the animal, first of all, right? Feed the good dog, not the bad dog. You know, we pollute our mind and we pollute our heart. You know, we got so many things out here in the world that can help cultivate, you know, this in us, where it takes over. So we need to fast from things, you know. And then think of when Philippians says, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are honest, what things are virtue, what things are praise. You know, think on these things. And that's what we need to be centered in, right? Oh, well, anyways.
One more slide.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm sorry, I do have more.
This is the last one.
Okay. Okay. There are two kinds of fasting in the church. There's liturgical fasting. Let's go to the next thing here. It says, and this is at certain times of the year, right? We have Great Lent is the primary time, and we did that. Why? Why did we start Great Lent? What was the purpose of it?
Get ready for Pascha.
But who was getting ready for Pascha?
Catechumens.
The catechumens. The catechumens were preparing for baptism. And they were fasting because you always fast before you receive a sacrament. Okay? Because you purify yourself. You're showing the spirit of repentance. Well, you know what? The faithful saying that's not right. All these people are preparing for the baptism, and we don't even live up to our baptism. We need to show our solidarity with these people and become as if we were catechumens and fast with them. You know? Not to be so self-righteous that we have arrived. Look at you, you're a catechumen. No, you know, and we see ourselves as that fellow sinner, right? And I think when we talked about Mary of Egypt, you know, if you notice when she went into that into the heart, into the very uprooted that evil out of her, you know, she still was speaking to Elder Zosimus, still was talking about, you know, depart with me, Father, for I am a sinful woman, you know, and she still had that sense about her, you know, which is such a great thing. And people who grow close to God become more and more aware of that, even if they're very old. You know? So, so the church did that. And then we had other seasons. We had the Advent season, right, of fasting. And we did that for people who are being baptized too, because they're baptized at Christmas and Theophany. Okay? And then we had the summer fast. The summer fast was designed for people who were baptized on Pentecost, but there was no time to fast before Pentecost because you're in the season of Pascha, so you fast over after it. And so it started a week after Pentecost, so you just got to celebrate Pentecost, then you start the season of fasting, and it lasted all the way till August 15th. It was the longest fasting period in the church. There were people who didn't fast before they got baptized. And man, that was just too long. They messed up the whole summer. Forget about that. No hot dog cookouts and hamburgers and barbecues and all that, going to the lake, forget about it. So they had a foot fast for the St. Peter and Paul fast, and then, which ended June 29th, and then August 1st to 15th, the Dormition fast. And then we have fast days during most weeks, right? We have Wednesdays and Fridays, right? We also have certain particular days, like strict fast days, like the beheading of St. John the Baptist, the elevation of the cross, So we have these punctuated times of fasting, but we also have punctuated times of feasting to balance it. That is also so important because we're also called to celebrate life and to have joy in life. It isn't just about fasting, but it's also about feasting. Let's see here. What else do we have? Okay, strict fast days, whole abstinence, and usually the fasting is from animal products, and of course the reduction of how much we eat of food. Period. It isn't just abstaining from the animal products. Why is it animal products we're abstaining from?
Because they taste the best.
Okay, all right. Well, what else? What
Because
else?
Adam and Eve didn't eat them in the garden.
Okay, all right, there you go. And we're going back to paradise. Going back to paradise. Okay, good. All right. And then there's Eucharistic fasting. This is fasting you're doing, just like people who fasted for baptism. This is how you're fasting to prepare to receive the Eucharist. Same thing can be said about receiving Holy Unction. There should be fasting before you receive Holy Unction too, by the way. Okay. So, we have total abstinence here before you receive the Eucharist. Of course, there are certain people with medical conditions that don't permit them to fast in the same way other people can. Not everybody can have a strict fast. That you work out with your priest, okay? But the typical rule is total abstinence. And with that is also the prayers of preparation to say in your prayer book that you do that before you receive communion. And you might also link the periodic confession would be, an important practice too, in preparing oneself to receive it, just as one would have done that when they were being baptized too. Okay. All right. So, I'm going to sit down. And I'd like to, any comments, questions, indignations, consternations, anything anybody wants to add?
When we lived in Michigan, our priest at the church, Father Joshua, was always really generous. And we were young vegetables, so it made a huge difference. But I just remember one time I was babysitting for them. They had 5 children. So they could go out to eat. So I'm there in a very modest house with the 5 children. We eat a very humble dinner. It's like potato soup or something. I get all the kids in bed, and I go downstairs. I'm sitting in this pitiful chair. It's like falling apart. Just thinking about how humbly they all lived. And then the phone rang, and I didn't answer. Just went to I thought a little voicemail. They had an answering machine. It was somebody saying, Josh and Janine, thank you so much. I know it was you guys that took care of that bill for me. I'm just so appreciative, this and this and this. And I'm just thinking, they don't have anything. They give everything to us, and then they're going sneaking around, paying people's bills off. It's just like, how could... And I always think, well, golly, I can't complain about this chair at my house because this chair is horrible. I don't know. But
It's a beautiful story.
Yeah, they just always set this example where it's like, well, boy, I know somebody who does a better job than me. I mean, I met the person, I got to do better.
Yeah.
So,
What an inspirational story that is.
When someone like Saint Seraphim says that about if you don't fast, you're not a Christian,
Yeah.
can you go expand on that just a little bit more? If there's any expanding to be done.
Well, you know, I mentioned how in Orthodox Christianity, in the sermon today, is asceticism is central to our faith. It's not an extra, it's not an add-on, it's not an optional thing. Because being a Christian means to be a follower of Christ. To be a follower of Christ means that you do what he did. You know. And in order to do that, you also have to become like him. Right? And there's no other way to get there but through the spiritual disciplines we just talked about. And if people think they can get there some other way, there just isn't. You know. You know, it's a self-deception. I think, okay, I can not learn self-control. I can not deal with. I can ignore dealing with the passions. I can avoid. What's the word I want to say? Persecuting myself. That's not exactly the word I want.
Mortifying.
Mortifying the flesh. You know, and its lust, right? That I don't have to really deal with any of this stuff. I could just kind of live a nice life, and I could live with my luxury and not think of others. And that, you know, and I could live a haphazard life of prayer and not be disciplined, and to really say I'm really a follower of Christ and do that. How is that being a follower of Christ?
Just so different from what you hear in America.
Yeah, it is. No, we're not called to be judging somebody else. I don't mean to sound that way, you know. And people, I think one of the things that with many, you know, I mean, or let's face it, a lot of Orthodox people, a lot of us, you know, we don't do a good job with these things that we're given and we know, you know. And we actually have a path before us. We actually have a method that we're taught and how to do this, you know. And that method, by the way, there's also an individualized kind of part that goes on there. It's not one shoe fits all. There's some basic things we all do, but there's ways we have to find out how this works for me. That's a process, you know. But what a lot of people have done who don't have that kind of guidance and that kind of support and that kind of help and that kind of aid, you know, that they kind of learn it on the fly. They learn it sometimes in spite of what was there in their church, you know. You know, they would read the Bible and they would read something about fasting and they end up, golly, maybe I should fast. And you don't even know how to do this, but you know, I've known some people in the Protestant tradition who have fasted quite a bit, you know, because they know that this is something they should be doing. I know that there are certain movements within Protestantism that has started to introduce, you know, like they'll have a 40-day fasting period. I mean, it's kind of made up in a way, but they're recognizing by that this is something that they have forgotten all about because their faith tradition taught against it. You know, I mean, the reformers, some of them really taught very negatively about any of this. You know, so it wasn't exactly their fault. You know, I know a lot of people who maybe they don't know how to fast from food, but maybe they fast from other things though, and they struggle very sincerely with it. You know. So I want to be fair and put them in this, you know, the context of Saint Seraphim is he's in Russia where all these Orthodox people are there, and this person's supposed to be an Orthodox Christian, and this person hasn't fasted. This fat person doesn't fast. Well, how can he even call himself a Christian? He has all the tools, he has all the teaching, he has all the examples in front of him. You know, you had starets running around there and at that period in time, you know. You had a lot of holy people to see. And this person decided that he doesn't need to do that, he can still call himself a Orthodox Christian in good standing. Well, he's not an Orthodox Christian, no matter what he calls himself, according to St. Seraphim. I don't know if that helps too, you know, but this is my own ramblings there. But good question, Carl.
Well, also in this country, as far as Christianity is concerned, I mean, you know, we fight against a system of capitalism and commercialism that encourages people to buy and to satisfy themselves and to reach for the best that this world can offer.
That's right.
And we have to learn as Christians that is not our philosophy, that we struggle to obtain the kingdom of heaven, not the best that this world can offer. And so if someone's, I mean, so the people who are in the business of pushing products, whether it be food or jewelry or whatever. We get Departures magazine because my husband has an American Express card. So this Departures magazine, I mean, is just full of all the ads for every luxurious thing in this world and the places to obtain them and the places to go on these vacations and all the highest quality of every product in the whole world. And you look at this, and this is what our capitalistic society pushes. Now, is capitalism in and of itself bad? You know, this is a question that no. I mean, this is what enables us to do the good that we want to do because we have the freedom to start a business and to, you know, we don't have people tyrannizing us and telling us what to do and how much product to grow or sell or whatever. But I know in my own life, you know, I mean, I would look at Dorothy Day, the Catholic activist.
Right.
I mean,
great example.
Who's, you know, who converted to Christ and then went against the excesses of capitalist society. And you look at the entertainment industry too, and what they're promoting. You know, they're not promoting Christian values. So that there is a dichotomy here.
Remember that.
So there is a dichotomy here that we as Christians, it's very confusing to Christians, you know, growing up. I mean, I had an example growing up in my family, but there are many people who go to church on Sunday and then they're, you know, but then you're part of this world with all this other stuff coming at you. So how do you discern? Unless you have someone really to teach you.
Yeah.
Seriously.
That's because I was thinking when we're talking about the fasting, the nun, Mother Macrina would always say, I always tell the youth, you gotta fast because if you can't say no to a candy bar, there's no way you're gonna be able to say no to drugs.
Right.
But when I think about, like, I have younger siblings, they're teenagers, it's like, boy, nobody is teaching them how to say no how can you blame them if they don't say no?
Right,
To every
To
single thing
every
they feel
single
like having at the moment.
yep,
Right.
yep,
Anything you want right that second.
that's
That's
right.
why,
That's
man,
right.
when I look at the kids, it's like, I want that too, but if I don't show you saying no, then we can't do it. We can't just, you'll never learn.
Yeah, yeah. Great stuff, good comments.
The only other thing that I would ask, if you can give in a nutshell how Anthony Bloom became a Christian, are you?
No, I can't.
Oh. Well, he was a communist youth, and he was an atheist. His family were Christians. His family was Orthodox. But he finally, and this is very short, but he went to a meeting of Christians. I mean, he was a solid atheist, and he went to a meeting of Orthodox Christians and listened to the priest, and it made him so angry that he went home and opened the scriptures and began reading the scriptures. And he, in a very short time, he was aware of Christ standing next to him in a non-material way, but he was aware of Christ standing next to him. And he met Christ and knew that Christ was real, that he had risen from the dead, that he was God incarnate. And that began his conversion.
Yeah, Ginger.
This is off topic, but it's something that's kind of, I've been thinking a lot about lately. We were watching Charles Stanley last night, which we probably should never do, but we did last night. And it just stirred up a lot of questions that I've been thinking about. One is, you know, it's transitioning from being Protestant to Orthodox.
Mm-hmm.
I do not really know anymore how to sit down and tell somebody. I mean, I can tell them about Christ. I can share with people what, you know, he's done for me personally, but as a testimony. But I don't really know what to say other than come with me to church. And I'm not even sure that I should be looking for those kind of opportunities anymore. I just don't understand a lot about that. And I know we don't have time to talk about it today, but I wanted to put that in your brain, and maybe next week we could talk a little bit about that. Because it's something that'll weigh.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of opportunities that open themselves. That just people will ask a question, or something's going on and you can say a little something and they'll perk up and go, what? And it gives you a little opportunity to.
I guess you don't have to imagine that you're gonna take it all the way, you know, like you're gonna meet somebody and then that's their first experience of Orthodoxy and they're gonna come to church that time. It could be a number of things that happens over their lifetime.
Right.
So just try to take advantage of every opportunity you have, but don't expect that.
Well, so many evangelicals are searching because they're. I remember going to church Sunday morning and leaving going, okay, now what? You know, that there's what? Okay, this is like step 1 of 10, and we never go past step 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt that
And the
way.
thing is, if our body's going to grow, it's probably going to grow as a result of evangelism, not recruiting other Christians away from their churches. I mean, that's a slow process. But I guess what I'm thinking is, I mean, the harvest is wide, the laborers are few, therefore send forth laborers into the harvest that they, you know. I want to know how much to beat the bushes. You know, should we go to the houses across the street and knock on doors and like we used to? I don't know. So, but I think in order for our body to grow, we're going to have to talk through and think through some of these things.
Good. I like that conversation. Look forward to it, yeah. I just wanted to go back to, when Alice was talking and talk about our culture itself, and I think this too relates in some way. And I was thinking about the prosperity gospel,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
And I was thinking, where else in the world could that have got started? Only in America.
That's true. But it spread to lots of other places, though.
Well, certainly did.
Yeah.
Certainly did.
Weird.
But it would have to start here. You know, and that's the deception. That I mean, it's such a huge deception. It's just the opposite. You know, people or people even before them, like Reverend Ike, who said, "I don't want my pie in the sky by and by. I want my pie and I want to eat it now." You know, and you know, I mean, it looks good to people because it's what they want to hear, but it leaves them empty and hollow. It's kind of like drinking some. I wish Ben was here.
Decaf coffee? Is that
No,
where you're going with that?
no.
Non-alcoholic beer?
No. It's like it's what do you put in a radiator? Can't think of what that's called.
Coolant.
Coolant, yeah. And it's like drinking some coolant, you know.
Oh my, because it's sweet, but then kills you dead?
Yeah, but it'll leave you with a hollow feeling inside.
Oh! Wow.
That's the prosperity gospel. Yeah, Ben would know the movie that came out of. Oh, anyways, but I think that what you're saying, David, is so many people are giving up on Christianity. People are being disillusioned. People are questioning and they're saying, is this all there is? There are people who don't even look at it because it has no appeal to them. There are people that are becoming Muslim because at least they have some discipline. You know, and it has some answers for, you know, especially in prison, and people whose lives are out of control, and they're especially a targeted African American community, and they're leaving Christianity, becoming this because this will help gain them some kind of stability in their life, because Christianity isn't offering that. You know, and here we have Orthodox Christianity that has always offered that. Had part of the whole thing of this talk. That's why I'm kind of revolving it back to this. You know, these basic disciplines. You know, it's so simple and it's right there in the Bible. It's not anything that we're not in. You know, it's so basic and yet ignored so much. How is that possible?
Father Thomas Hopko has a good talk on Ancient Faith Radio under the special section that he gave to Wheaton College.
Okay.
Ancient Early Christian
Yeah.
Studies Center.
Yeah.
And one of the things he said in there is that Christianity, or Orthodox Christianity, or Christ himself, says come and die. That's what Orthodox Christianity is. It's come and die.
Yeah.
To come and die with Christ.
Right.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
In every area of your life, you die with Christ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
With the hope of the resurrection,
Right.
with the hope of being with him in glory.
And that was the point in the sermon this morning about, you know, why Orthodoxy has more in common in certain respects to Buddhism and Hasidic Judaism and some forms of native spirituality, because, you know, they do have these things of you know, of becoming nothing, or, you know, dying the great death, or in our case, you know, taking up the cross, you know.
Right. That's what he said. He said
know,
Christianity is the message of the cross. It's come and die on the cross.
And are we still on?
Yeah.
Oh, golly.
No.
I'll cut it out if you want me to.
Well, no, it doesn't matter. I don't know. But since Christianity is not been tried and found wanting, it just simply hasn't been tried.
It's been found difficult but not tried.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It hasn't been tried and found wanting, but rather found difficult and not tried.
Oh, Okay. That was C.K. Chesterton who
It's
said
G.K.
that?
Chesterton.
Thank you, G.K. Chesterton. Thank you very much. That's good. Someone else, though, said that it wasn't tried and wanting. It just wasn't tried. So who said that?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
But with the extra phrase in the middle.
Okay, all right, okay. Oh, well, you're doing the whole, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, okay,
and
very
that's
good.
why people haven't tried.
Okay.
But found difficult and not even tried.
Oh, okay, yeah. Thank you.
We have our friend Walsh, Gregory, he lives in Portland, but, I mean, I don't take any credit on our part, but he said that when we were in school and he saw us change, he was like, maybe there is something to that, and his roommate was Orthodox too, his roommate Mike, but, you know, evangelism, maybe it's not a stranger, it's the people that you're closest to, and when they
Yes.
see a profound change, they
Uh-huh.
wonder what
Yeah.
could have caused that.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Walsh was into Buddhism or something, I don't know what he was doing.
He was a little lost that year.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think about, I'll just go back to this AA business that people here. What do you think's happening to them when they get in these meetings and they start doing some serious work on their self and their life? And then they go to their church where if they are going, they might, you know, they're looking for this higher power, maybe they get involved in a church or something. And they don't think other people are working on their life. It doesn't look like they're really working on their life. You know, I mean, I wonder if sometimes the AA meeting becomes a substitute for church for them,
Oh,
sure.
absolutely.
Oh, sure.
It's a
You know.
spiritual organization.
you know, and that those are people that I think that, I don't know how to broach this, but I think those are some people that might actually be looking just for what we have.
Have you read
In our
the
next
Orthodox
neighbor.
12 Steps book?
Have I what?
Have you read the Orthodox 12 Steps book?
There are two different ones,
Mhm.
and there's one that some people say are not very good and they wouldn't recommend it to anybody. And then there's one that's fairly good,
I'm trying to think. What's
and
that priest's
I don't
name?
wanna,
Mel Weber.
Father
Meletios
Meletios Weber.
well, he's very good.
He's wonderful.
He's
Yes.
amazing.
And he wrote one of them.
He wrote.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. His is the good one.
Yes, yes. He's impressive. Have you ever met him?
Yeah.
A couple of times.
Oh, good.
Up there, yeah.
Great, wonderful.
But
We
about his
were,
book.
we were
Well-
thinking at one time that he was gonna become our bishop in the Diocese of the South.
Oh, I wish.
And that didn't happen at that time. And I don't even know who the three candidates are yet. They still haven't given us those names. You know, so if his name showed up there, I'd be kind of excited.
Yeah. But I mean, might give us an idea if, I haven't read the book in years, but if we
Right.
reread
Right.
that book,
Right,
I mean, I'm familiar with the AA group because I went to the family group for a long time.
okay.
So I'm
Yeah.
familiar with how it works and how it
Right,
goes, so I
Right.
think that's a great idea.
right. Is that book, is titled Toward Transfiguration or something like that?
Well,
12 Steps Toward, or something like that?
Steps of Transformation,
Steps of Transformation. yeah.
colon something, I can't
Yeah,
remember.
yeah. Yeah, that would be a good book for all of us to read, really.
I really like, he has his Eagle River talks, have you listened to those? They're
No.
like 8 hours long. And the only place that has a recording, we used to have one, but you can get it from Orthodox Christian cassettes, but it's
From
$50.
Don Lowry.
Yeah, from
Yeah.
Don. It's $50 though.
Well, Amy, you could buy one and share it
Yeah,
around.
I'll share it. I mean, there's some profound stuff in there about,
Because that was the Eagle River Institute that he
Right.
spoke at?
Mhm.
When did he speak there?
that was a long time ago. Long time ago.
Okay.
But he talks about what's the difference between your mind and your heart. What is the, for me, listening to it was, you know, one of the most like, what does it mean to be a Western Christian? And what does it mean to totally change that into becoming an Eastern Christian? Moving from your mind to your heart.
Mhm.
And he just, I mean, like I said, it's 8 hours of audio, but
Well, he gave a series.
over a few days.
Yeah, he